Lorenzo Salgado Araujo came to the United States in early 1990s from Mexico. The 52-year-old father of three lived and worked in the Houston area for decades. And on Tuesday morning at around 7 a.m., he left his home, as he did on workdays, to pick up his three coworkers in his white van and then head to his job at a construction site. But he didn't get to the construction site. He was shot and killed by an ICE agent in an unmarked car, according to his eldest son. His son, Ronaldo, says his father built a life in Houston, fulfilling his own American dream while also making houses for others.
My father was a private man, a man who dedicated his life to work. He worked the last 30 years of his life building homes in the Houston suburbs. Part of his dream was to build a house for himself and his family, just like the hundreds he had built for himself over his career. One that he could call home. One that he can call ours.
Following the fatal shooting, ICE said the traffic start was part of, quote, a targeted enforcement operation. The Department of Homeland Security put out a statement saying, and I quote them here, "From information we are receiving, he rammed an ICE law enforcement vehicle, refused to follow multiple verbal commands, and weaponized his vehicle in an attempt to run over an ICE law enforcement officer, resulting in our officer firing his weapon in self-defense." Tried to ram an ICE officer, weaponized his vehicle. Does that sound familiar? How many times exactly have you heard that line? Weaponized their vehicle and tried to ram us. It is because it has been the go-to statement when ICE officers shoot someone. It is what they said about Renee Good in Minneapolis, who ICE officers shot and killed. It is what they said about Marimar Martinez in Chicago, who was shot but survived. It is what they said about social media influencer Carlitos Ricardo Parias in South LA, and on and on. But again and again and again, in all three of those circumstances and in others, when we finally get to see the footage of these other incidents, we learn it's not the case. Sometimes it's just plainly invented. Well, just this evening, a local Houston news station, KHOU 11, obtained this new surveillance footage that shows something different than what ICE described. Here is how their investigative reporter, Jeremy Rogalski, breaks it down.
Now, if you look closely through the trees, you can see the white van followed by the ICE agents in a dark SUV. You could see it coming across the screen. Blocking traffic, crossing traffic, blocks the view for the moment. Then you can see the ICE vehicle appears to try to cut the van off, and both vehicles veer off to the side of the road. The white van then goes in reverse, then forward where it pulled over a few houses away. Meanwhile, the ICE vehicle makes a three-point turn on Canal Street and then drives forward to follow the white construction van.
You can see that in the clip there, right? It's the black SUV is swerving in front to cut off the white van. House Democrats are now calling for an investigation into this Houston ICE shooting. Congressman Christian Menefee is a Texas Democrat who represents part of Houston. He is one of the members demanding an investigation into this shooting, and he joins me now. Congressman, what do we know, particularly from DHS or anyone official, about what actually did happen to Mr. Araujo?
We know that a man who has spent so many years here in Houston, a father, a husband, someone who had built a business here and who had sent his kids to college, was murdered on the street in plain daylight by ICE agents who were in an unmarked vehicle. But outside of that, we know not much at all, because ICE has rushed to make statements, including calling Mr. Araujo a illegal alien instead of recognizing his dignity and his humanity. But they have put out no evidence. So we have seen and heard nothing from ICE except the same old that they have said took place in other cities, only for the evidence to come and show that that is not the case. So we know that ICE has been hiding the ball, that they have not shown us whatever evidence they have. And we also know that the Trump administration has already started lying about this.
The letter to Markwayne Mullin, who's now the head of DHS, demands that they provide complete and unedited body camera footage for the officer who discharged the firearm that killed Araujo. In addition, provide complete unedited body camera footage from all officers present in the incident, as well as all dash camera footage from both vehicles. His son talked about the fear that he imagined his father went through. And we've now documented several cases of this in our own reporting of basically unmarked cars coming out of nowhere. I want to just play what his son said about the fear that he imagined his father having in that moment and get your reaction. Take a listen to what his son had to say.
My father was being followed by 2 unmarked cars. Had my father seen an emblem of ICE or an emblem that says anything about law enforcement agency, my father would have complied, he would have stopped, he would have not ran away because he feared for his life. He drove fast because he feared that someone would take his tools. One of his worst fears is that someone took away his work tools, because that's the tools of the van as well, because that is how he made his livelihood.
What do you think of that?
It's absolutely heart-wrenching, and I think it speaks to exactly who we are here in Houston. Most folks don't know, but in Houston, we're a town of immigrants, where so many folks, whether they be blue collar, white collar, folks who are liberal, conservative, we all know people or have people in our communities, our classmates, who are immigrants and who are undocumented immigrants. And we treat them like the neighbors and the human beings that they are. But we're also a town that has a lot of road rage. And I can tell you, I can't think of a single person who I know in this city who would pull over for an unmarked vehicle where folks are yelling stuff out the window at them. That is not how law enforcement should be conducting themselves. If federal law enforcement, ICE, comes to our city, you need to be making sure that people know that you are part of the federal government, and all of your operations should be done in a way that recognizes the dignity and the humanity of the people who live in this town, and ensuring that they leave your interactions still alive. But that's not what happened at all. And we've already seen the Trump administration start to try to make lies about this. They have said that the officers were not issued body-worn cameras, and the reason is because of the government shutdown that took place earlier this year. Well, we all know that that is an absolute lie. ICE had $75 billion. They spent that money on enhanced operations across the country, on recruiting more agents, on getting more vehicles. But somehow they couldn't purchase body-worn cameras that are used at every single other level of law enforcement, from local government to state government. We're seeing the Trump administration start with their lies. We've seen a man was murdered in our community, and people are very angry about it, because in Houston, we take care of our own, and that includes our undocumented neighbors.
There's another part of this story, finally, I want to just get your thoughts on, which is there were 3 men in that van, as we said in the top he was picking up to work with. We have reporting it appears 3 other people were in the van. They presumably could recount their version of what happened, right? So there were witnesses to this from inside the van. They were detained by Immigration and Customs Enforcement during the encounter. We haven't heard from them publicly about what happened. Now, those 3 men are under pressure from immigration officials to agree to self-deport. Juan Proano, who's a representative for the families and CEO of the League of United Latin American Citizens, claimed in an interview with New Republic. This is reporting from the New Republic about these 3 individuals who could be witnesses to this. And seems to me it's very important that their security and safety is looked after, and that their account is gotten. And I wonder if there are efforts afoot to make sure that happens.
This is exactly why here in Houston, Democratic lawmakers are calling for an independent investigation, because the Trump administration has shown that they cannot be trusted. They're already trying to get rid of witnesses to send them out of the United States so that they're not able to provide their account. They're already making excuses for why there was no body-worn camera footage. ICE cannot be trusted to run this investigation. DHS cannot be trusted to run this investigation. I was so proud when our district attorney, Sean Tier, already announced that he is doing his best to begin conducting an investigation at the local level. But the feds control the evidence. And we have seen time and time again that ICE will lie, that the Trump administration will lie. And I will tell you, I have toured immigration facilities here in the state of Texas, including Dilley Detention Center, and I have seen and heard from folks who were being pressured to self-deport. It is the policy of Donald Trump's administration to force folks who are in this country who get detained to self-deport. And they're doing the exact same thing with these folks who would have eyewitness accounts. At some point, we're all going to have to ask ourselves, is the Trump administration trying to get to the truth, or they're trying to demonize, harm, and murder immigrant communities across this country in order to score political points and hopefully do well in elections? I think it's disgusting. I think what the president has done with ICE is an absolute travesty, and I want them to get the hell out of my city.